What does the secret tunnel under the synagogue in New York hide? Social networks, especially Twitter and TikTok, simply exploded with anti-Semitic disinformation after the discovery of a secret tunnel under the synagogue in Brooklyn, New York. The news about the underground tunnel turned into a crash of conspiracy theories, and a lot of people already believe that the Jews supposedly held children there, and someone even supposedly saw footage from the same tunnel, where, in addition to bloodied mattresses and toys, even medical equipment was found. And against the backdrop of the war in the gas sector, and especially the beginning of the pre-election campaign in the United States, this theory came as it should. By the way, for those who believed in another theory a few years ago, about the secret government of the Democrats, about the satanic cult that Clinton, Obama and Biden adhere to. At that time, this theory was called QAnon, and it also arose perfectly at the beginning of the pre-election race in the United States. On the other hand, the Chabad Lubavitch movement, in the synagogue of which this tunnel was found, conspirological theories have been going around for a long time, which are the Hasidim themselves and warm up with their mysteriousness. Hello, friends, my name is Alexei ПЕЧИЙ. Today is January 14th on the calendar. Let's discuss together what kind of secret tunnel the Jews discovered in New York, where it leads, and why a real medieval conspiracy theory is already spreading around it. And the main thing is whether it is true and whether it is worth comparing it with the QAnon movement. So, on January 10th, in New York, 10 people were arrested after an argument with of the New York Police Department in the world headquarters of the Jewish movement Chabad Lubavitchi in Brooklyn. Chabad Lubavitchi are the adherents of the isolated Orthodox Jewish movement. What happened? The historic synagogue of Brooklyn, which serves as the center of the influential Hasidic Jewish movement, was destroyed this week during an unusual public debate which began with the disclosure of information about the discovery of a secret underground tunnel on the territory of the synagogue. The conflict broke out in the world-famous headquarters of the Chabad Lubavitch movement in New York. This is a deeply revered Jewish place, which receives thousands of visitors every year, including foreign students and religious leaders. But this week it suddenly turned out that back in December 2023, under the famous synagogue, a secret tunnel was found, which was dug without official permission. At least, this information initially appeared in many media. But at the beginning of this week, the older leaders of the community tried to close the tunnel and even fill it with concrete, which caused a protest action of younger Jews, which turned into violence when the police arrived for arrests. In the synagogue, it was said that the tunnel began in the basement of an empty apartment building behind the headquarters of Chabad Lubavitchi, passed under a number of offices and lecture halls, and eventually joined the synagogue. This is an act of extremists who broke through the wall of the synagogue and destroyed the sanctuary, trying to preserve unauthorized access to the synagogue. Shirsan headed the Habit Lubavitchi for more than 4 decades before his death in 1994, in 2004, reviving the Hasidic religious community, which was devastated by the Holocaust. Supporters of the construction of this tunnel said that the synagogue is already too small, and that is why they decided to expand it through a tunnel that would connect the synagogue with other neighboring buildings. Interestingly, many of those who fiercely support the expansion of the synagogue in this way, they divide the Messianic faith into the fact that Schneerson is still alive and it is he who leads the process of expansion. Let me remind you again, Schneerson died back in 1994. The leaders of the Chabad Lubavitchi community opposed this act of vandalism, and on January 8, a cement truck arrived at the synagogue in order to fill the entrance to this tunnel with concrete. And, as the members of the community say, this tunnel simply began to destroy the building of the synagogue itself. Supporters of the tunnel staged a protest, tore off the wooden sheathing of the synagogue in order to protect this tunnel. As a result, several supporters of the tunnel were arrested. Footage of the tunnel, as well as fierce clashes between some members of the Chabad and New York police, became viral. But still, the story became viral, because objectively it was strange. As it was originally reported, a small sect of Hasidic Jews built a complex system of underground tunnels under the streets of Brooklyn without any clear reason. The leaders of Chabad Lubavitchi could not clearly explain the reason for the appearance of these tunnels, except to say that it was built by young people who got lost. And therefore, this immediately caused a wave of anti-Semitic conspiracy theories. The right immediately began to write posts on Twitter that secret underground tunnels were found impregnated with the blood of mattresses, children's strollers, and even medical equipment. Although, objectively, no one has seen these shots anywhere. Moreover, a theory appeared that in these Jewish tunnels in New York, quote, a very strong atmosphere of Simon Trent reigns. What do I mean? This is a very dangerous anti-Semitic conspiracy theory about a blood feud from the Middle Ages, including the murder of a Christian child, as a result of which 15 members of the Jewish community were burned on the bonfires. If you are interested, just find in Wikipedia the history of the confrontation of the Catholic Church against the Jews in the Middle Ages and read the article about Simon Trent Sky. In short, this is a theory that in the 15th century in northern Italy, a community of Jews allegedly kidnapped a small Christian child named Simon, and he was never found. Now, that very legend, I emphasize, of the 15th century, they are trying to pull on what happened in New York. And even with the official explanation of the New York Police Department, it is impossible to stop this conspiracy theory. This passage was the result of the ongoing dispute between the community of Chabad Lyubavitch and the sect that broke away from it, sect, which for a long time has been dragged into disorder over the right to property on the building of the synagogue, in which Lyubavitch's headquarters are located. The members of the split-off group believe that Ravin Menachem Schneerson, who headed the Lyubavitch Chabad movement until his death in 1994, is a messiah, but the main movement of the Chabad rejects this statement. Back in 2006, the court ruled that the Chabad Lubavitch community controls the synagogue building, which is located on the Eastern Boulevard in the Brooklyn area of Crown Heights, where the Hasidim mostly live. But the split-off sect of the Messianic movement still considers the synagogue building its own, and since they are not allowed there, they decided to dig a tunnel to get illegal access to the synagogue building. The main community, Chabad Lubavitch, also immediately made it clear that it does not approve the construction of these tunnels. And it was they who initiated the process of its liquidation by flooding it with concrete. And here we come to the most interesting. I'll make a spoiler. Not for nothing, at the beginning of this issue, I mentioned the QAnon movement. This is a conspirological theory that something is being done in the tunnels with children, which has been disseminated thanks to 2 posts by the theorist of the QAnon conspiracy, Stu Peters, who has more than 500,000 followers on Twitter, and an extremely right-wing figure named Dom Lucra, who both of these figures immediately launched a theory via Twitter that, allegedly, in fact, quote, Jewish families throughout the country participate in the same actions that are carried out in the tunnels under the synagogue in New York. Moreover, many analysts in the United States noticed that the pressure of anti-Semitic conspiracy theories on the tunnel caused a special alarm in the light of a sharp surge of disinformation on Twitter after his purchase of Elon Musk. In fact, the idea is now actively developing in the United States that all Jews are perverse, secretive, clans, they do strange things under the cover of darkness and with unknown purposes. And in this regard, for the sake of interest, I decided to read what Russian propaganda writes about Lubavitches. And here it is, it immediately gives you a very interesting, in quotation marks, story. Allegedly, at one time, Lubavitches were expelled from the USSR in the 20th century, but the United States accepted them. I will give you a quote from one of the propaganda Russian mass media. For 8 years of his dominance in the United States, Chabad strongly strengthened his influence and was represented in all the key bodies of state power in the United States. They also managed to put their man, Alan Greenspan, in charge of the Federal Reserve System. But all this is not enough for the Chabad. With the help of freshly printed dollars, the Chabad administration of Clinton Gore, financed by the pro-Jewish Left Party of Europe, almost everywhere received greetings from those who came to power and spoke for the introduction of a single euro currency, and the formation of the United States of Europe helped. And it is very interesting to observe how, ideally, in the period of the start of the presidential race in the United States, conspiracy theories emerge again, which, according to the idea of the right-wing Republicans, should blacken the Democrats. And this is not the first episode. The Donald Trump team was thinking about this since 2016, when the QAnon movement suddenly appeared in America. Now I suggest you review a series of my project, Conspiracy Theory, which was recorded 3 years ago and which tells about the very movement to the UN. Watch this issue, and then try to compare the current conspiracy theory with Lyabovich's and the conspiracy theory of the time about the Democrat Satanists. 5G networks, coronavirus, population chipping, the belief that the world is ruled by a small group of Satanist villains, headed by the American Democrats. And only Donald Trump can defeat all these attacks, who is not sent to the world almost from above. This is not a nonsense of the madman, but the most large-scale conspiracy theory of modernity, which largely helped Donald Trump consolidate his electorate in the past U.S. presidential elections and quickly spread around the world. My name is Alexei ПЕЧИЙ. This is the author's block of conspiracy theories. In December 2016, in the midst of the Trump's victory march at the presidential election, an armed man enters the Washington pizzeria Comet and makes several shots towards the cafe's basement. He came to punish the Satanists led by Hillary Clinton, who seized power and traded children right from the basement of the pizzeria. The man was so obsessed with this idea that he was not stopped by fear of being killed, nor the fear of spending many years in prison. But to his disappointment, he did not find Hillary Clinton, nor poor children, nor the secret basement from which the so-called Satanists ruled the world. This episode became the beginning of a whole era of conspiracy theories during the presidency of Trump. For many Americans, he became almost a messiah who saves the world, but someone is constantly in his way. It was after the terrorist attacks in the Comita pizzeria that mass propaganda in America began with the idea that the social gap between the rich and the poor is not the fault of the president and not the economy, but some kind of secret government. The most numerous followers of these theories were representatives of the QAnon movement. These people believe that the world is ruled by a group of influential people, who trade children, worship Satan and control the media. The main members of this secret community, according to the adepts of this theory, are politicians from the Democratic Party, Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama and Joe Biden, Hollywood stars such as Tom Hanks and Oprah Winfrey, billionaire George Soros and even Pope Francis and Dalai Lama. And of course, only Donald Trump can defeat this dirty gang of invaders, who is waging a secret war with them. Moreover, according to the QAnon theory, Trump was recruited by military generals to win the 2016 elections and destroy the secret group of conspirators. The conspiracy theory itself appeared in 2017 on the anonymous forum 4chan. The user under the nickname Q began to write conspiracy messages under the tag "The Silence Before the Storms." This is how the movement began. And it would still remain in the network, if not for the words of Trump himself. Entering the post of President, Trump, speaking in front of the generals, threw the phrase that a storm was supposedly coming to America. When he was asked which one, Trump mysteriously answered, "You will soon find out." And then, as if by chance, the mysterious Q from the network turned up. As well as the fact that Q himself, whom no one saw in the eyes, is a secret U.S. intelligence officer with access to no less secret than his documents. And the nickname Q symbolizes the highest level of permission to secret information of the U.S. government. And despite all the absurdity of the theory, it has captured the minds of many Americans who support the Republicans. No matter how absurd the conspiracy theory of QAnon sounds, today it has a huge number of followers. Only Facebook has several million of its supporters. Even the politicians of the Republican Party were inspired by the theory. And, of course, the theory was supported by Donald Trump himself. He has repeatedly reposted posts of conspiracy theorists on social networks, thus only pouring oil into the fire. In Washington, they know about Trump's tendency to believe in conspiracy theories, so until the last day, his entourage assured the president that his elections were stolen and that it was simply necessary to declare a military position and cancel the election results to save the country. And although the theory was originally based on lies, people continue to believe it. And the failure of the guy who shelled the Comida pizzeria and rotted in prison for 4 years is explained very simply. Like, the guy was unlucky, it just turned out to be the wrong pizzeria. But even in spite of this, QAnon and the almighty Trump have become a religion for many. For example, a year later, an armed man on an armored van blocked the bridge on the Govora Dam. He was so upset that Trump has not yet arrested a single Satanist, that he demanded a report proving that, although there are no landings, Trump is investigating the crimes of the conspirators. The man was arrested and he faces a life sentence for the terrorist attack. It turned out that the killer, the ardent admirer of QAnon, believed that the boss of the mafia was a member of the shadow government. And, unfortunately, there are a lot of such examples, not taking into account the vandalism, pogroms and mass protests under the flags of QAnon. Unfortunately, the conspiracy theory has spread to other countries. The second largest distributor of the idea of Q is Great Britain, where the supporters of conspiracy theories could be seen at mass actions in support of Brexit. Next, Canada and Australia follow and close the 5 countries Germany is suspected of. And in the case with Germany, we have a dangerous precedent. The movement to the UNO was picked up by the anti-Semitic group of Reichsbürgers, who believe in some kind of secret conspiracy of the Jews. And this already has its consequences. Later it turned out that before the terrorist attacks, he issued a Russian brochure about a secret service that allegedly controls people at a distance. It was the followers of QAnon, on the eve of the vaccination of COVID-19, launched a duck about another evil genius Satanist. Bill Gates wants to chip the population of the earth and rule people. This is how the movement, which was born in America as a cult of Donald Trump's personality, is gradually capturing more and more countries of the world. And, alas, even after Trump's departure, these ideas turned out to be tenacious. After all, any conspiracy theory can be justified and rewritten, and a new messiah can soon become a new bright politician. In addition, I ask you to subscribe to my YouTube channel, like this issue and share the link to this video on your social networks in order for as many viewers as possible to learn the truth. That's all, Thank you all, bye everyone.